Phil Ivey's legacy at the World Series of Poker is unmatched. Join us as we relive the iconic hands that make him a living legend. This is the evolution of Poker Hall of Famer Phil Ivey.
And you see the percentage, of course, in Deeb's corner right now with Phil Ivey to act and 2 7s. It's not going to hold up very well against 2 kings, but we'll see how Ivey plays.
Phil likes to play pocket pairs. Sometimes he mixes up his game, and he will play the 7s. He is an underdog.
And here comes the flop. It is 3, 10, and 7.
The underdog becomes the big dog. 3 7s for Phil Ivey. So he is now the overwhelming favorite among these 3 players. Freddie Deeb had checked the 2 kings. And Bruno Fertuzzi may be thinking he's the leader now. He has high pair on the board with 10s, so he comes out betting.
Phil Ivey's got his hand on a stack, and it looks like he's going to play, at least call, maybe raise with his set of 7s. And he indeed does raise with his 3 7s, and the action goes over to Freddie Deeb,
who can't figure out what's happened. He has the pocket kings, and now all of a sudden he's got a bet and a raise in front of him. And he would have thought the kings were best. Well, Freddie Deeb stacking them up.
He's counting them.
I'm on at 159.
And he is going to go all in.
An efficient all in. He tells you exactly how much he has left. Very customer friendly. Bruno Fertuzzi gets rid of the Jack 10, and quickly Phil Ivey has called.
And the pot size up to 489,000, and all the cards on the table. And now Deeb knows that Ivey has a set of 7s.
I don't think he'd raise it with 3 7s.
He's not happy to see that. And he's all in. He'll be out of the tournament unless he wins this pot, and he's going to need a king.
And it's a turn, and there's the king.
He immediately takes the lead in the hand.
I don't think he'd raise it with a set of 7s, you know?
Well, now only a 7 will bring this pot back to Phil Ivey.
Send it, baby.
Here comes the winner. It's a 9, and it's not going to do it for Phil Ivey, and so Freddie Deeb pulls it out of the stack.
120, 150, 159. 159.
All right, relax, relax.
I'm excited, baby. I'm sorry.
I understand.
Chris Moneymaker is our chip leader at this point. Don't expect him to do anything huge, but he's looking at ace-queen, so he's going to make some sort of move. He bet 60,000 on the ace-queen. Action over to Phil Ivey now, and looking at a couple of 9s.
Phil Ivey always loves pocket pairs.
He'll call it. Next in line is Jason Lester. Ivey with the lead with the 2 9s. Well, Lester with a couple of 10s. And at least before the flop, you figure he's going to stick around, and he indeed does call that.
Now we have 3 players in the spot.
Nobody else wants any action, and so we're going to get the flop now. Moneymaker, Ivey, and Lester in the hand. The flop comes 2 queens.
A monster flop for Chris Moneymaker, who makes 3 queens and becomes a prohibitive favorite.
Check.
Jason Lester checks, so the action to Moneymaker, you have to figure he's going to push things right now. And he does with 70,000.
I thought he might have pushed it more. Generally, you make a bigger bet there and you push out the competition. We always like to say better to win a small pot than lose a large pot. He's almost inviting calls right there with the 70,000. A big favorite in the hand.
Well, Phil Ivey is indeed going to take that bait, and he'll call it.
Yeah, Phil Ivey will call, and I guess for the 70,000 he'll call. He is well behind in the hand, doesn't know it. Jason Lester actually has a better hand than Phil Ivey right now. He decides he's going to stay out of harm's way. He doesn't want to get any trouble at this point. The next person knocked out doesn't make the final table. So Jason Lester.
Here comes the turn in. It's a 9, and that gives Phil Ivey a full house.
Miracle on 4th Street for Phil Ivey, who now has the full house and the better hand.
But nobody knows it here except Phil Ivey.
And there's no reason for Moneymaker to assume that Ivey had the pocket 9s. So he's going to bet 200,000. Understandably, he just can't think he has that type of hand to beat him. He's got to believe the 3 queens are best right now. And Phil Ivey deciding what he's going to do, he's obviously going to play. And if and when he wins this sizable pot, Phil Ivey will put himself in terrific chip position for the final day.
I'm all in.
He is all in.
All in.
And quickly called.
Chris calls.
The pot size is 1 million now.
Nine's full for Phil Ivey. He's
Moneymaker is disgusted. He never could have assumed the 2 nines in the hole for Phil Ivey. And now he is going to need an ace, a queen, or a 6 on the river to win the hand, which would knock out Phil Ivey.
Moneymaker's looking for an ace on the river. Or another queen. Here we go. We're going to see one more card. It's an ace!
An incredible knockout blow for probably the best player left in the tournament, who's gone down.
Oh, amazing. Phil Ivey loses with a full house to a better full house of Chris Moneymaker,
Who has now knocked out heavyweights Johnny Chan, Umberto Brenes, and Phil Ivey. My goodness.
Who is this young man? The remaining players thrilled to be at the final table, but also happy and relieved that the great Phil Ivey will be absent.
Phil looks down at 8-7 off on the button, and another raise to 11,000.
Ivey raising from the button. The worst position in the Rio right now, Lon, is anyone in the blinds or anyone at Phil Hellmuth's table?
Bernard Perner with pocket deuces. He lost about 55,000 chips to Phil on the first hand. Looks like he's going to try to get him back right now.
But he's saving time. His sunglasses are already on.
Heads up to the flop. It is 7, Jack, 7. Ivey out flops Perner again, trip 7s. Perner, first to whack, left with his pocket deuces. That's 22,000.
Ivey's not the best player, Lon, because he gets cards. He wins when he's got nothing, and when he flops the goods, he knows how to maximize his earnings.
Phil with a flat call there. Turn card is at 8. Ivey with a check mark. He now has a full boat.
Boy, this just isn't fair.
Perner now checks.
I don't think Phil sweats.
Phil will try to make Perner sweat and makes it 40,000 to stay in the hand.
I thought Ivey might have checked and let Perner maybe take a stab at the pot on the river, but he correctly determined he'd get a call from Perner right there.
Perner with the check call. River card is a 7. Quads, are you kidding me?
Phil's gone from rags to trips to a full house to quads.
He's improved on every street. Perner checks again.
Now all Phil Ivey is trying to do is calculate how much he can bet to get a call.
Can he get more from Perner? He bets 120,000.
Phil's calculations say 80% of the pot could make it look like a bluff. And maybe Perner's got a notion not to lay his deuces down.
Ivey may have led Perner into believing his deuces are good. That's the genius of Phil Ivey at work. And he does make the call. Yeah, quad 7s for Phil Ivey does the job.
Never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line. He's my man.
Action begins on Ivey. Ivey with pocket kings.
Phil Ivey with pocket kings. I think that's illegal in 45 states.
A raise to 11,000.
I don't want to play with Ivey. I don't think this guy wants to play with Ivey. I don't want to play with Ivey. I don't want to play with Ivey.
Nobody wants to play with Ivey. Action on Kevin Stammen, 23 years old from Coldwater, Ohio, on the button with pocket 6s.
We have found our victim.
He does make the call.
Before he became a poker pro, Stammen used to pour concrete for basements.
Heads up against Phil Ivey now. Queen, queen 7, kings up for Phil. He's still a huge favorite.
Stammen won a bracelet this year in No Limit Hold'em. In that event, Ivey finished 18th.
Ivey checks here. Stammen makes it 16,000 to stick around.
World Series fun fact for you, Lon. Phil Ivey has never lost a hand in which he's called a 16,000 chip bet on the flop with pocket kings against a bracelet-winning former concrete worker.
Yeah, who didn't know that? Turn card now. 8 of hearts. Ivey still good with kings up. He checks.
Yeah, Ivey checks while he's checking out Stammen.
Stammen checks back this time. River card now. Is another 7. Ivey earns the check mark. He checked the turn, and now Ivey reaching for chips. 25,000.
Ivey thinks his kings up are good. Stammen now has to play the board. This is a fold or raise for him.
75.
And he chooses raise, trying to bluff Phil Ivey.
Yeah, he's going to try to convince Phil he's got the best hand, but the way he said 75, it sounded more like Screech from Saved by the Bell than, say, Amarillo Slim.
This is the only way Stammen can hope to take this pot.
Well, Stammen trying to push Ivey off the best hand. Remember, Stammen bet the flop, so Ivey's got to think it's possible Stammen's either got a queen or he has a 7 in his hand and got really lucky on the river.
Ivey looks wary, but he does make the call. Stammen says, well, I'm just playing the board, Phil. Ivey shows him his kings and will win that pot.
My man, Phil Ivey. How hasn't he won the main event?
He takes over 100,000 from Stammen.
Almost. Yeah, you.
Against Phil Ivey, almost is never good enough.
You know, giving Phil Ivey pocket aces is like giving the Incredible Hulk power bars.
He raises to 16,000. Action over to Bernard Perner. He gets out of the way. Now on Bingjiang Wu, who goes by Ben Wu. King, queen of spades.
You may recall the 22-year-old poker pro outplayed Ivey in a hand just before the money bubble burst.
He will call for 16,000.
This is Wu's first World Series cash ever. Ivey now with 36 career cashes.
Heads up, Wu and Ivey. The flop is 7, deuce, queen. Wu hits a pair of queens, but he's still way behind.
Your top pair no good here against the pocket aces.
Ivey will bet it, 23,000.
One of Phil's skills is very basic, reading the strength of his hand versus his opponents and extracting maximum value.
And Wu will make the call.
By the way, if Phil ever wears sunglasses, I'm done with poker.
Turn card is an 8. Ivey still best.
And that's still a safe board for Ivey's aces. No flush out there, no straight out there.
And he will bet it accordingly, 55,000.
You know, this may be one of those situations Ivey just talked about. Wu may think he has the edge in this hand. Ivey knows he has the edge in this hand.
Action now on Wu. We know he can be aggressive, but that is just a call. So Ivey way ahead going to the river. River card 4 of diamonds. Ivey with a check mark, holding those pocket aces.
No flush out there, and unless Wu had a 5-6, no straight out there.
How much you got there?
How much has he got, Lon?
He's got a little more than 120,000, I believe.
I'm thinking of the margin of error on your math. He's probably got somewhere over 100,000.
I'm all in.
Ivey will bet enough to put Wu all in.
If Wu calls here, his main event is over. Does he really want to call off the rest of his chips with top pair against the best player in the world? He's got about 20 big blinds left.
Does he feel he's being bullied?
I call.
And those are the last words we will hear from Wu in this main event. He does call and will be knocked out.
Yeah, Phil Ivey kept wagering the right amount and just methodically took out Ben Wu one bet at a time.
Down at pocket kings.
When Ivey won his 7th bracelet this year, he was asked what the over-under was on getting his next bracelet. He said tomorrow.
Ivey raised it to 16,000. Action on Mick Graydon from Dublin, Ireland. Ace-9 of diamonds.
You may recall on the bubble, Graydon folded ace-king suited pre-flop after an Ivey raise.
From the big blind, he'll call and go heads up. It's 9-5 queen. Ivey's best with his kings. Graydon hit middle pair. Graydon checked. Ivey, 22. That's half the pot, 22,000.
Phil Ivey goes to work. Now, what a difference in demeanor between my two Phils, Ivey and Helmuth.
Graydon calls.
He appears to be under duress.
Turn card. 7 of clubs. Ivey's kings are now an 8-1 favorite. Graydon checks again.
I just believe that Ivey knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that his kings are good right now.
I think you're right, Norman. That's enough to put Graydon all in.
And it is a tough spot for Graydon. He's down to 15, 16 big blinds if he folds here. And I can't believe he feels good about his 9s.
Call.
He will commit all his chips with middle pair, and Ivey shows him the kings.
Graydon sees the bad news.
106,000.
And now Graydon will need an ace or a 9 on the river, or he is wamboozled.
River card is another 7. Let the wamboozling begin. Ivey wins the hand. Graydon knocked off. He'll win over $25,000.
I believe Phil Ivey has knocked out 2, maybe 3,000 people in this main event.
Phil Ivey contemplating an all-in from Mads Anderson, who flopped a pair of 6s. Ivey with 2 7s, but this is for most of Ivey's chips.
Anderson pushed with 15, 16 big blinds left. Tough call with middle pair, and Ivey doesn't have that many chips left to work with.
All right, I call.
And Phil does make it.
All in.
Anderson shows 6s. Ivey ahead with the 7s.
Yeah, Phil, you're ahead. Wow. Now let's just hold it and start building up that chip stack again. But if Phil gets unlucky here, he will be decimated.
All right, turn card with Anderson at risk. is a 9. Anderson with a gut shot straight draw. That gets Phil's attention.
So now Anderson needs a 6, 10, or 8 to stick around.
The river card is a 5 of spades, and Anderson will lose all his chips to Phil Ivey.
I think Phil was feeling a little pressure that time. I know he doesn't sweat, but he saw his life and my life flashing in front of him.
Ace-king.
Looks a little grumpy. Lighten up, Bob. You're in the main event and doing great.
A raise to 75,000. Norman, look who's here.
The dermatologist?
Alex Jalali, the German dermatologist with ace-queen off.
He's got such nice skin.
And he will make the call for 75,000 to Phil Ivey with pocket kings.
My man with pocket kings in the small blind ball game.
I'm all in.
All in. Whalen, ace-king, that will go all in.
I think the dermatologist will be checking his appointment book.
I wonder if he got your memo, Norman, about ace-queen. And he does fold it.
I'm all in against Phil Ivey.
I'm all in against Phil Ivey, the 6 deadliest words in poker.
Ivey shows his 2 kings.
Nice hand.
Mazel tov.
So Whalen will need good luck to come from behind and beat Ivey and remain in the main event. The flop is 5, Jack 4. That's a good flop for Phil.
And Whalen's still looking for an ace or runner straight.
Turn card is a 7. He's still looking to spike a winner.
Ivey about to pad his stack. Bob Whalen has to have a king.
The river card is another Jack, and Ivey wins another hand, knocks off another player. Bob Whalen goes out in 105th place.
I like Ivey more than Aussie. It's more subdued.
They'll all get there eventually.
Work with pocket jacks. Ivey just re-raised Hack Dang. Mel and Pat Humphries usually see Phil get his chips in good, but he's trailing the 2 queens of Dang.
Dang, a 24-year-old pro at University of Virginia grad.
All right, I'm all in.
And he comes back over the top, all in.
300 more. Was it?
Actually, it's 416 more.
I'll call. Go ahead.
He calls with the jacks. And Dang in good shape to double up through Ivey.
I don't like this, Lon. You had me in such a good mood earlier with the ace of spades, but now you got me watching Phil Ivey dominated.
Playing pocket jacks. All right, so Dang's queens. And now a set of jacks for Ivey to take the lead.
Oh, you got to feel for Dang. From a 4.5 to 1 favorite to 1 step out the door.
Wow. So Dang now looking for another queen, but it's a 5 on the turn.
And now Dang needs that queen, or he will be out of here.
The river card is a 7, and Ivey completes the bad beat.
Nice plan, shot.
Hack Dang out of here in 98th place.
When the best player gets lucky, it's lights out.
Ivey very gracious in victory. That bandwagon becoming a locomotive as his run for the final table gathers steam. Ivey with ace tray in the big blind, called a raise by Ryan Fair holding 2 deuces, as did the small blind Andrew Lichtenberger with ace jack, and now we're 3-way to the flop. The flop is queen jack 8. Lichtenberger hits a pair of jacks.
I hate seeing 2% next to Phil Ivey's name.
Lichtenberger with his 2 jacks has the lead. The 21-year-old from New York, one of the best online players around. He checks.
Middle pair, top kicker, and Lichtenberger says no. It's possible Lichtenberger just wary with Ivey behind him. It happens.
Ivey checked. He missed the flop. Fair checks as well. Turn card is a 10. Lichtenberger still best with his jacks. There is a straight draw out there.
So maybe we'll end up with a queen high straight on the board, and everybody will be happy.
Lichtenberger still leads with that pair of jacks, and he checks again.
Again, he doesn't want to take a stab at this pot.
Ivey checks behind.
You know, sometimes the Ivey factor is in play. Nobody wants to bet into him.
And Fair checks as well. So a free river card for all. The river is a tray of hearts. That pairs Ivey, but Lichtenberger earns the check mark.
Lichtenberger and Fair both are poker pros. They should act like it and take a stab at this pot.
With his jacks, he checks again.
Well, it looks like Phil Ivey is saying there's a 250,000 chips out there. If no one wants them, I'll take them.
150,000 says, I want it. Fair folds right away.
Now, Ivey trying to bluff his way through 2 marginal hands. He's got 1 out of the way.
Lichtenberger gives up the best hand, and Ivey will take the pot.
The Ivey factor. I think I have my next book.
Lichtenberger had them both beat the whole way. Fair had Ivey beat until the river. Phil Ivey won the pot only because he's Phil Ivey. On the button, Phil Ivey called a re-raise from Kent Goulding, who's in the big blind. Now the 2 are going heads up to the flop. The flop is deuce 4 queen. Goulding with a pair of queens. Ivey with a heart flush draw.
Goulding with a lot of experience playing backgammon, chess, and slot machines.
Check.
He checks top pair.
Ivey had tried to steal the blinds. Now he's going to semi-bluff at it.
Try to steal this pot. That's enough to put Goulding all in. And with top pair, Goulding says, okay, let's go.
Uh-oh.
How often do you hear that, Norman?
Just a queen.
Just a queen is good enough. Ivey with just a draw. The best player sometimes is behind. And boy, I do hate hearing Ivey say, uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. All right, Goulding at risk. Turn card is a 9. He's still good, but not out of danger.
Well, now Ivey can only knock out Kent Goulding with a river heart.
The river card is a heart! Ivey rivers the flush to put Kent Goulding on the rail in 77th place.
Ivey takes down another victim. Earlier in the main event, he was knocking them out from ahead. Now he's coming from behind.
Day 8 has not been too kind to Mr. Ivey, but he is 6th in chips, and as long as he's in this event, everyone should be afraid. Be very afraid.
Come on.
Nick Maimone moves all in again with Queen 5 suited.
And this time, Maimone has less than 9 big blinds left.
Action around to Phil Ivey. Maimone's favorite player, he told us. Pocket jacks.
Well, Nick Maimone is going to have company.
On the button, Phil will make the call. So only the blinds to act behind Phil. Jeff Schulman in the small blind. Ace 4. Thought about it, but folded. The big blind folds.
Hope I'm live. Nope, I got one.
Maimone all in and behind again. It's like Joe Stapleton says on Poker Road, if you can't take the best of it, take the worst of it.
So Maimone in trouble against the pocket jacks of Phil Ivey.
30 seconds, Phil. I love you.
I almost wanted to come.
Oh, please, Phil. Let's not be ridiculous.
Here's the flop. Deuce 8-10. Ivy still in control. No queen there.
Phil's got that look. Hey, Nick, you're going to walk away with 350 large, and you can tell people Phil Ivey knocked you out.
Maimone said he was happy just to make the top 100. Turn card now. Oh! There's the queen for Maimone.
See, Phil, you really didn't want that to come.
Boy, Phil looks a little green in the gills.
Ivey now will need a jack or a 9 for a straight to knock Nick Maimone out.
The river card is an 8, and Maimone stays alive.
I showed aim too. I mean, I have to. Listen, sorry, Phil.
Phil thinking you can stick your sorries in a sack, son.
Woo.
Ivey won his first bracelet in 2000 in Pot Limit Omaha. Heads up against Amarillo Slim. A changing of the guard. That's the last time Slim made a World Series final table.
Phil raised to 320. Schulman with pocket deuces.
Jeff Schulman looks like a Hollywood producer who hasn't had a movie made in about 6 years.
He lays this hand down. Action on George Karageorgis, a restaurant owner from Montreal. And he'll lay it down. Nick Maimone.
Here's the kitty corner. Maimone, Lichtenberger, Mattis, and Cata. There should be a cotton candy machine on that side of the table.
Mattis lays it down on young Joe Cata. Cata won't play this hand either. So they'll leave it up to the old guys. 27-year-old Jordan Smith in the big blind with ace-9 offsuit.
Smith's only 27, but he just seems more world-weary.
Wondered what Ivey might have raised with under the gun. He figures Ivey doesn't have much, so he's going to raise it with that ace to 1 million.
There's 3 betting Ivey with ace-9 off.
How much are you behind?
I don't know.
Actually, this is the second time Ivey's asked him that with a pocket pair, and it's the second time Smith has had ace-9.
Sometimes it's not what they answer, but how they answer.
I think I started with 6.5 or 6 or something like that.
I'd like to tell you what Phil Ivey is thinking, but he thinks at a much higher level than I do, so I don't want to pull a brain muscle.
Ivey needs 680,000 more to make the call and does toss it in casually.
The last time these two were matched up, Ivey was in the blind. This time Smith's in the blind, and Ivey has position.
Smith and Ivey will see a flop. The flop is 5, Queen 10. Ivey's pocket 8s are still best.
Jordan Smith just has ace high.
And he checks it.
Come on, Phil, you got pocket pair. Show some pep in your step.
No, he checks with 2 overs on that flop. And now the turn card is another queen. Ivey still best, and he adds a flush draw.
And Jordan Smith still with just ace high.
Smith
Check.
will check again.
This is a spot Ivey might pounce on with a pair and a flush draw.
But no, he checks too.
I'm surprised.
River card, ace of spades. Ivey with a check mark, hitting his flush. Smith, though, got that ace. He has aces up.
Check.
Checks again.
Ace.
Ivey checks.
I guess Ivey was worried about a higher spade flush.
Smith shows his aces up. Ivey mocks his flush.
He just mucked his hand. He can't even win when he wins. Phil, you had a flush. 5 suited cards is a flush. You gotta be kidding me. Everyone in Chappaqua, New York wants to get good at poker.
Raised to $1.25 million. The blinds are up to $250,000 and $500,000 with a $50,000 chip ante. Jeff Schulman lays it down. Darvin Moon will not play this hand. So in the big blind, Phil Ivey with ace-9 of diamonds.
Phil used to have a small journal he'd fill with strategy and player observations, but he lost that journal, so now he just has a mental notebook.
Ivey makes the call to go heads up with Steve Begleiter. The flop is all paint. Queen, Jack, King. Ivey with flush and straight draws is favored. Begleiter still with the best hand with his 7s.
You see the percentages. Great for Ivey, but he will check right here and respect Begleiter's pre-flop under the gun raise.
On playing Phil Ivey, Begleiter said, okay, Phil knows what he has. Phil knows what I have. I only know what I have. This is not a good situation for me. Begleiter bets $1.75 million.
I'd love Phil to check raise here, but that's risky business with his chip stack.
No check raise from Phil, just a call, and he'll pay to try to hit his draws. All right, the turn card now. It's a jack.
Well, now a king or a queen would also give Ivey 2-pair with a better kicker, but Begleiter's jacks and 7s continue to lead.
Ivey checks again.
Ivey hasn't made a hand yet, trying to keep the pot small.
Begleiter will give Ivey a free river card. Phil trying to find some way to win this pot. River card is a tray of hearts. Ivey misses all his draws. Begleiter gets the check mark.
Phil Ivey cannot win this pot unless he bets at it.
Mel Humphreys with the fingers crossed.
Of course, Phil here can just check, concede the pot, and play for another one.
$6.6 million in the pot, and Ivey's going to bet at it $2.5 million.
A bluff disguised as a value bet by Phil Ivey. Let's see if the amateur can sniff it out.
Phil told us much of his success comes because he has a good feel for what people are thinking. Begleiter sees a lot of overcards out there, and Phil Ivey betting into him, and Begleiter lays down the best hand.
I'm starting to get that loving Phil Ivey feeling back, Lon. It's okay, Lon. Popeye has his spinach, and now my man has his lucky apple from the Humphreys. You know, actually, Ivey is a champion moocher. He eats all day, and he never reaches into his pocket.
Ivey may reach here. He's got ace-king.
I'm all in.
And he does move all in for about $6.5 million.
When Phil Ivey's all in, it's casual and cool.
All right, let's see how the rest of this final table reacts. Folded to Schulman. He lays it down now to Darvin Moon in the big blind. He has an ace. Ace-queen. Darvin takes a big swallow. He looks more nervous than Ivey, who has all his chips in the middle.
Well, Phil needs a double up, so I don't think he'd mind hearing ace-queen come on in.
A call.
A call from Darvin Moon to put Phil at risk, but Ivey with the better hand and a chance to double through one of the big stacks. Crowd certainly behind Phil Ivey here.
Lucky apple.
Darvin's family hoping that it's a rotten apple. Darvin has always said these guys can outplay him, so with all the chips in pre-flop, that might be his best chance against the likes of Phil Ivey.
Even if Ivey doubles up, he would still be one of the short stacks, but it would be a move in the right direction. The top poker pros hoping one of their own can hang on.
We're all cheering for a king.
Well, we know Phil is cheering for a king, and I can only assume Darvin is looking for a queen.
Yeah, that queen would put a hurt on Phil.
Good hand. Good hand. Good luck.
Good hand? You said good hand.
It's a good hand. Better than mine, isn't it?
Huh? Oh, yeah.
They're pretty friendly foes.
I'm sorry, Lon, I have to. Ivey, Ivey, Ivey.
All right, Ivey at risk with his ace-king against the ace-queen of Darvin Moon. This entire theater on their feet. anxiously awaiting this flop. Phil Ivey all in. Here's the flop. Oh, and there's a queen! And that sends a dagger through the hopes of Phil Ivey.
My goodness. We're going to need a medic to the broadcast booth.
Not many are celebrating that queen, but the Moons certainly are.
How do they put right in the window?
Like the mouth just read my mind. In 2003, everyman Chris Moneymaker took out Ivey with ace-queen. Now, 6 years later, another everyman, Darvin Moon, is poised to take out Ivey with ace-queen again.
All right, the turn card now. Ivey needing help. The tray of clubs is no help.
Close.
He still has a sense of humor.
Phil possibly in the middle of his main event demise. He takes it matter-of-factly. If it has to be anyone, I guess I'm glad it's Darvin Moon who's doing the deed.
Phil Ivey staring elimination right in the face.
Ivey needs a king and a king only, or his 2009 main event is over.
River card is a 5, and that will do it. Phil Ivey eliminated in 7th place from this 2009 main event.
Darvin slays Goliath.
Everyone in the Penn and Teller Theater standing in salute. Quite a testament to Ivey's almost limitless skills that he was favored by many despite his severe chip disadvantage.
Lon, I'm gonna need a moment. The mouth again speaks volumes for me.
Last year's 7th place finisher Phil Ivey just put all his chips in the middle with pocket queens. Yuji Masaki has pocket kings and a bit smaller chip stack.
This fella graduated from Kyoto Pharmaceutical University. A pharmacist is going to cripple my man?
Masaki calls all in, so Phil Ivey risking nearly his entire chip stack.
Oh my goodness, Phil Ivey is in deep trouble here.
The ever-present Humphreys need to muster some mojo for their man.
The Humphreys? How about me, Lon? I'm more worried than they are.
All right, the flop is 8-8 tray. Masaki with kings up now.
Phil's going to be down to less than 5 big blinds after he loses this hand.
The turn card now. Oh, there's the queen for Ivey. Masaki 1 card from the rail.
Oh, Ivey gets lucky, and now he'll have more than 100 big blinds. He just needs to dodge a king.
The river card. Oh, no! Masaki spikes the winner.
4 top 25 main event finishes in the last 8 years, but Phil Ivey now is crippled.
Masaki with the better of the 2 full houses, and the Humphreys can't believe it.
They're not even going to need a chair today.
Oh, my.
Can we at least check if this guy's got a valid passport? I'm more devastated than Phil is.
Don't go nowhere. Stick around for the kill. Make sure you're right there.
Now Ivey in the big with 2 red 4s will come along.
Again, it's the farmer and the engineer against Phil Ivey.
These are the top 3 stacks at this table, and they will see a flop. 4-7 queen. Wow, something for each, but Ivey's set of 4s stands tallest, and he checks. Top pair for Mater.
And no reason for Mater not to like top pair with a king kicker.
5,500, middle pair for Ola. Ola is game. Now Ivey with a set of 4s. The pro with a check raise to 18,000. And Ivey's biggest fans, the Humphreys, are in the house. Good to see them.
I've asked them to follow me around the country playing poker, but they have declined.
Mater likes his big queen, and he comes along for 12,500.
Well, Ola can't like it as much anymore.
And he does get rid of middle pair, so heads up now to the turn.
I never get any value with my sets, so I'm writing down what Ivey just did. Check, get both players to commit chips, then check raise, and thin the field.
Jack of diamonds. Ivey now has Mater drawing dead. And Phil with a lot of the orange chips, a healthy bet of 35,000.
Ivey bets 2/3 the pot and hopes he has a farmer on the hook.
Well, the farmer does have top pair with a king kicker, but he's drawing dead and makes the call. And they are building a good-sized pot. River card, another queen. Ivey with 4s full. Mater with trip queens. And Ivey moves in for more than the size of the pot. Mater has him covered, but barely.
Well, Mater has to love that river card, but of course, it's the worst card possible for him. Good luck getting away from this hand, Phil Mater.
The Nebraska farmer challenging the man they call the best poker player in the world, Phil Ivey. Ivey rivered a full house with the same card that gave Mater trip queens.
Trying to push a farmer around.
Ivey overbet the pot, hoping Mater's hand is strong enough to call.
And after much thought, Mater folds and saves his main event unbeknownst to him.
A reluctant fold, but a good one from Farmer Phil.
As the action with pocket jacks.
I wanted to be a farmer, Lon, but I grew up in the suburbs and it was all 7-Elevens and malls.
Full-time farmer, part-time poker player with a raise to 4,200 with the jacks.
We just ran the numbers. The odds of Phil Ivey ever setting foot in Nebraska, less than 1/100th of 1%.
This is the part of the main event where the initial rush of adrenaline tends to fade and your mind and body better be sharp for the long haul. Ivey in the big blind with 8-6 off, and he calls for 2,200 more.
Ivey 9 bracelets, but none of them in no-limit hold'em.
And here is the flop. It is 8-5-6, top 2 for Phil Ivey. Welcome to the world of pocket jacks, Farmer Phil.
Well, Farmer Phil is comfortable with that flop.
Ivey checked. Mater bet 6,000. 9-time bracelet winner check raises to 20,000.
Ivey executing a Nebraska poker flyover right now.
Pause for concern for Mater. But he re-raises to 51,000.
Well, earlier on day 3, Mater thought Ivey might be pushing him around. He's decided, incorrectly, that that's the case this time.
I'm all in.
All in?
Phil Ivey re-raises the amateur all in.
I got a call.
All in and a call.
And Mater with his jacks makes the call to put himself at risk against Ivey's 2-pair.
Looks like Mater might get 86th from this main event.
Phil Ivey says, I got you.
Can I use my one time?
We have a one-time request from the friendly corn and bean farmer.
They are now issued with your entry ticket. So Mater looking for help. The queen means he's going to need his saving card on the river.
Mater needs a queen, jack, or 5, or he is wamboozled.
He's on his feet to watch the river card. Ivey looking for the knockout. And the river card is the jack, and Mater scores big with trips to double through Ivey.
There was my one time.
I knew that was going to happen because I didn't bet 70,000 against him the last. Swear to God, it's weird.
Ironically, Phillips owns a transportation company which takes people to medical appointments. With King 8 of Hearts, he has calmed down. And he's ready to get into the action, a raise to 7,000.
Phillips hits the ground running again.
He does indeed. On the button, Ivey with King Jack offsuit.
I can assure you Ivey will not lend Phillips a hand here.
He calls for 7,000. Hudson releases his small blind to Mater. 4 tray of hearts.
He's a World Series circuit grinder with 12 cashes. In fact, he plays poker so much, I don't know who's looking after the farm.
Norman, I think he was thinking about playing just because Ivey was in the hand.
Well, let's see if Phillips can stumble into a pot here.
Oh, very nice. Phillips dominated by Ivey. Trey, Jack 5. Phillips with a flush draw, but top pair for Ivey. Phillips first to act.
Well, Phillips tripped coming in. Now he's betting into Ivey out of position.
16,000.
This is a rough feature table for the 49-year-old amateur from Kenosha.
Wow, Ivey taking some time with this. Raises Phillips all in.
Well, I think Phillips might have to gamble with this one.
He too is thinking about it.
A call.
And here he goes all in with his flush draw.
Well, Ivey nearly a 2-to-1 favorite to end Bill Phillips' day. Phillips not happy to see his king is useless here. He'll need a heart or running 8s.
And he does have 2 shots at running down Phil Ivey for the double up. Turn card now. Phillips pairs up. He's now got a chance at trips again, Norman.
Phillips now needs a heart or an 8 to double through Phil Ivey.
The river card is the queen of diamonds. Ivey saved Bill from breaking his neck and then knocks him out. Phil Ivey looking for bracelet number 10, main event number 1. Pocket trays. A raise to 7,500.
One of Ivey's homes is in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. He has his own chef on staff there, like he can't make Honey Nut Cheerios on his own.
To Ola. Looks down at ace queen, not suited, but playable unless your name is Norman Chad.
Ha!
That's a call of 7,500. Steinberg with pocket tens.
His twin brother Danny, also a fine poker player. You know, I prefer when Max is dressed to kill with a nice shirt and necktie. This is slumming it too much.
World Series bracelet winner last year, shooting for his first main event cash. Calls from the cutoff. James Weeks suited 4-5 into the muck. Rabinovich folds to the big blind. Tony Gregg, queen 8 of clubs.
Getting 7-1 on a call here. He's a bargain hunter.
And that's what he does. 4 players will see this flop. This is an action table. Here's the flop. Tray 10 ace. Steinberg with middle set. Ivey with bottom set. Gregg missed and he checks.
Gregg will be spared any bloodshed on this one, but that flop is the deadliest catch for Ivey.
16,000 is the bet with the 3 trays from Ivey. Ola now with top pair and a queen kicker, but only a 1% chance.
Yeah, as usual, ace-queen in a heap of trouble here. This is the 3rd straight year the amateur has played the main event.
Ola putting some chips together. Ola with a raise to 41,000. Now Steinberg with way the best of it.
What a great spot for Max. He's got to figure someone's got an ace or maybe someone has a spade draw. His decision here is whether to slow play or announce himself.
Exactly. Does he want to clear the field or just kind of coax them along?
It looks like he wants to jump.
Yeah, it does indeed. Ivey bet 16,000. Ola raised it, and now Steinberg with the best hand just calls.
Well, with that call, Max disguises his hand as either a draw or just an ace.
Tony Gregg folded. Now Ivey with the set.
And Ivey's got to be loving this spot too. A set of 3s is best here most of the time.
But not against the set of 10s.
Right now, Phil trying to size up a 3-bet here.
It's tough enough playing heads up. You get a 3rd player involved, and it makes things that much more difficult. Ola with the raise, Steinberg with the call.
All in.
Ivey announces all in.
That I didn't expect.
Oh my goodness.
But Ivey wants to drive out any draws, or maybe he's over betting here to make it look like he's just got a drawing hand trying to induce an ace to call him.
Now Ola with top pair.
Ow.
The amateur has to know he's in over his head. And folds.
I call.
And of course a call from Steinberg.
I have a set.
Ivey at risk and way behind.
You got me covered, don't you?
Yeah, he's got you covered. This is stunning. Ivey was cruising along 140 big blinds to begin the hand, and now he's staring at going bust. Only a 1-outer saves him.
Got psyched out for this part. This bet before.
Ivey was thinking he'd be one of the chip leaders. Now he's hoping he doesn't have to get his car from Phil Hellmuth.
The worst of beats. Turn card. 5 of spades, no good for Ivey.
Ivey down to 1 card, and only 1 card saves him. He has to have the last tray in the deck or his main event is over.
Steinberg on the threshold of a monster knockout and nearly doubling up himself. The queen means the end of Phil Ivey in this main event.
What a knockout blow Max Steinberg just delivered. And I think Ivey is shell-shocked.
But I think Phil was napping with his eyes open with 7-6 of diamonds. He's going to wake up to a raise of 11,000.
Speaking of records, 2-time bracelet winner Howard Tahoe. Andrew has now played at the World Series of Poker 41 consecutive years. And Lon, this is your 13th consecutive main event in the booth, and you haven't lost a dime that whole time.
My Scottish ancestors would be proud. All right, Keranen with 10 tray throws those into the muck. All these players celebrating quietly in their own way that they are in the money at the 2014 main event. Vertical with 8-7 of clubs on the button. He'll call for 11,000.
By the way, my other favorite Phil, the poker brat Phil Ivey, bluffed off almost all his main event chips on day 2 with 10-3 offsuit. See ya.
Folded 2, the big blind. Nacho Sanchez, 52-year-old farmer from Fresno, California, makes the call with king 10. 3 players will see this flop. Jack, Queen, King. Sanchez with top pair, and he's open-ended. He checks to the razor. Phil Ivey with a flush draw. Ivey with 4 orange chips. 20,000 to Vertical, who had a big whiff on that flop, and he folds.
But that was a ripe flop for Sanchez, huh?
With the best hand, Sanchez just calls. Turn card now. 5 of clubs. Sanchez is still good.
Out of position against Phil Ivey. It's like driving blindfolded at Indy.
He checks again. Ivey. No flush yet, but still with chips in hand. 48,000.
Yeah, Sanchez just seems weak. Ivey trying to push him off his hand.
The amateur not going anywhere. And there's another call.
It's tough to make a living check calling against Phil Ivey. The stress alone will kill you.
River card now. A 7 that pairs Ivey, but it's Sanchez's pair of kings that would win the day, and a third check from Sanchez.
And Ivey knows he probably can't win the pot unless he fires at it again. Will he fire at it again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow, that's a lot. That would put Nacho all in.
Don't know if Nacho wants to call off all his chips here. You hate doing that. Oh, Ivey just gulped. Never seen that before. He should wear an Ivy League scarf.
Nacho does not want to put all his chips in the middle against Phil Ivey, and Ivey will take that pot. Bruno Politano with a raise to 14,000. Ivey with ace-king off.
When Chris Moneymaker knocked out Ivey on the 2003 main event final table bubble, it was such a jolt. Ivey didn't feel like flying back afterward, so he drove from Nevada to New Jersey. 4 days in a car thinking about that hand.
Ivey with a re-raise to 45,000. With Ivey's big stack, we should be able to see his full power against this field tonight. Fold it over to Zach Hall and his unique umbrella hat he brings every year.
Yeah, well, I hate getting poked by an umbrella on the street. I can't imagine how irritated a poker player would be if they're poked by an umbrella on the felt.
3-time bracelet winner and UCSB Gaucho. Jeff Madsen on the button will fold.
By the way, what did Moneymaker start? This is the 9th straight year the main event has had more than 6,000 entrants. When Moneymaker won in 03, the field was 839.
Politano now faced with the re-raise from Ivey.
I'm all in.
And the Brazilian says all in.
Okay. You got 100 more, right, or so? 16 total. More. 155 more. Okay.
And Ivey makes the call to try to score another knockout here.
Yeah, 28 big blinds left for Politano, and it's for more than 20% of Ivey's stack.
So Ivey behind in this race for all of Bruno Politano's chips. And Bruno on his feet.
Thank you.
Yeah, another day at the office for Phil Ivey. Bruno Politano a bit on edge, at risk.
All right, here is the flop. Queen, Trey, Queen. Queen's up for Politano, and now he's nearly a 3-1 favorite.
Ivey thinking, let's keep it moving, folks. I want to see a turn card.
Bruno finished 17th in a field of about 1,000 at a World Series event earlier this summer. 5 of hearts, no help to Ivey.
A very snappy all-in. I think Politano is talking to the deck. And the deck's like a bartender. It's got to listen.
River card. Another 5.
Vamos, filho. Vamos.
Bruno doubles up.
Count.
Cats opened with ace-queen for $500,000. Folded to Phil Ivey in the big blind with ace-8 of hearts. Phil Ivey calls for 260 more.
Ace-queen will find a way to lose this hand, Lon. Trust me, my friend.
All right, one of the short stacks. Ivey now is dominated going to the flop. And here it is, and it's Queen 5, Queen trips for Cats, and the nut flush draw for Ivey.
It looks like Ivey's phone ran out of juice.
Ivey checked it.
Cats sitting on a monster.
Yellow chips worth 100,000 each. There are 6 of them.
I'll be honest with you, I don't like the way Cats bets. And we just showed you Ivey getting short on chips with the nut flush draw here.
Tension builds.
Call.
All in and a call. Well, he's got outs.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even like the way Cats turns his cards over. He does have my man in awful shape.
Ivey looking for hearts. Turn card now. Pairs the board, and that will do it. Phil Ivey drawing dead, eliminated at the hands of Kerry Katz's full boat.
While Ivey opening the button to 550,000, and there's a big spoonful of Ben Heath medicine being deployed out of the big blind. 3 bets to 185. Another 1.3 to call off of the 7.9 remaining. And Ivey is going to make the call.
So his 6th sense a little off today. We saw when he was 3-bet by Jensen. Ivey folded the better hand in that pre-flop spot. Here he's 3-bet by Heath, and he's going to call with the lesser hand.
But he is going to flop a club draw. 10-6 deuce. 4 million in the middle.
That's a big spot for both of them.
$1.25.
That is certainly not going to shed Ivey. Very small continuation bet.
.3 in the middle. How is Ivey going to navigate here? Because obviously you can pick up some fold equity, not against aces, but by putting in your raise here, but off of this 6.6 million stack.
All in.
The sizing would have to be all in. Ben Heath going to double check, I would imagine, and flick in the call. So here we go. Phil Ivey's tournament life at stake here.
Hello, Phil.
Ben Heath again with a sporting good luck being issued. We're playing a 17.2 million chip pot.
And Heath just a clean board away from going heads up for his 2nd bracelet. If he can knock out Phil Ivey here.
4 of clubs on the turn leaves Ben Heath drawing dead. River will be inconsequential given Heath has no club.
What was I thinking he was going to knock him out? Who was I kidding?
So down go the aces.
8.
Raise. 800,000.
Ace 9 on the button. 800 to go.
We raise. 28. Oh, pardon me, 2.8.
There we go. A little old school.
8-6 off suit from Ivey. He just decides he's going to 3-bet it.
By the way, he's here, about to win, potentially his 11th bracelet, and his 6th sense does seem to be off since we've been watching this final table.
Well, our sample size is obviously modest in contrast to the overall body of work that Phil has put in this year, but there do appear to be a few missteps. That said, we don't know what this hand entails. There could be a fold in store. Alex makes the call, and neither player hits this flop. Jack-7 trade 2 hearts. How bad do you want it?
Yeah, this is when you got to put on your big boy or girl pants and your suspenders, roll up your sleeves, and be a man or be a woman.
Check.
Ivey checks it.
Well, I'd like to see Alex bet. I'd like to see Phil check raise. Okay. I can't even get into it. They're going to check on my
9
watch.
on the turn, and Ivey now has an open ender. Ponikovs has made second pair top kicker. $6 million still up for grabs.
Checking.
Phil checking a second time. I think it is safe to assume that Alex is going to
assume nothing, but you are correct.
Bet this?
Yes, he is going to bet this, I assume. Maybe.
$3 million.
Half pot.
$3 million. $3 million is the wager.
All in.
Oh my goodness, a check jam from Phil Ivey here on the stone cold come with 8 high. Risking his tournament life. Alex
Exactly.
wants a count with this ace-9.
Can it work? Will it work?
8 and 8. 10.
It's actually 11.
Call.
Alex says call, and now is poised to pick up the bracelet if he can fade a 5 or a 10. Just like that, suddenly we play for it all. Over $700,000 in prize money, separating first from second. And that is the cash value of this one.
We have seen Ivey get it all in on the wrong end of it a few times here tonight. He's going to have to get lucky again here to stay alive.
And he doesn't do it. The 8 pairs Phil. And the Latvian has his second.
Ivey with 2 queens.
Note this, too. Off 12 big blinds on the button. Does not jam. Trying to induce. He may get his wish.
I was just going to say, does he induce the king 10 to get the chips in here? Not just yet. Tolerating defense. 10-5-5. Very good news for Phil Ivey at the moment. Ivey bets 600K.
this is the absolute dream for Ivey. This is going in, and he has just got a hold.
1.6.
Tolerating the small check raise to 1.6 million. As you see on the bottom left corner of your screen, Ivey has 3.6 behind.
I'm all in.
Does jam. Tollery makes the call, and here we go. Phil Ivey about a 4-to-1 favorite to find the double to move up to more than 10 million in chips. Can the queens hold? Turn card is the 3 of spades. Safe turn for Ivey. Just has to dodge a king or a 10.
No.
It is a king on the river. Oh, no.
He was dead to me, mostly because he stopped coming here, and we do have an all in here from Ewing.
All in.
With ace deuce, Rodriguez all in with pocket trays. So 2 stacks up for grabs. Yakar Galper from Israel.
I have 155.
Small blind. Ivy's in the big blind. Ivy's putting chips forward, and Ivey with pocket kings. Back-to-back monsters for Phil Ivey, and here with a double knockout potential and a huge pot.
This could be an unbelievable start to the day for Phil.
Fortunately, I haven't used it until now. What a spot. That's awesome.
We keep track. We've got runners out there keeping track of the one-times.
It's on a big block. Hey, can hit a 3 there. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I know, but I put him on ace X, so.
Well, ace still alive.
I understand.
She got it. She's got it.
But what a feeling Ivey must have had looking down at those kings, even if you're Phil Ivey, who's been in this position several times, no doubt, but in the big blind with 2 shoves in front of him.
And he had dropped down below 20 bigs such a short while ago. We saw the big pickup with the set of 9s, and now he will just go well beyond 1 million chips. If this holds up.
Yeah, working towards an average stack.
One time, baby. Guys, they're both using it against you. Tough to die.
And as a corollary, what a terrible feeling for Rodriguez, who came in with a healthy stack today, bluffed off a bunch to Phil, and is now a 4-to-1 dog.
Oh, and a third king for Ivey. 2 clubs. Ivey's got the king of clubs. And you look at the 2% and the infamous less than for Rodriguez.
I think we're all in.
If you got a less than by your cards, that's not good.
I'm out. Good games. GG.
I'm out. I'm out. A double knockout at the main featured table for Phil Ivey to start day 5.
Double one-timers.
Well, I don't want to brag, fellas, but what if you have a significant other who's won a ring?
Oh, there you go.
How does that factor into it?
These are tainted rings. One was a senior's ring, and one is not yours. It's hers.
Well, interesting board here. Rodriguez with the nut flush draw after Ivey flopped a set of 9s. Ivey bet 50. 2 more greens come in from Rodriguez to make the pot 250,000. Red king, but it's a heart on the turn.
This is dangerous territory for Phil Ivey, obviously, with the top set on the flop. But if a diamond comes in, is it possible all of his chips could go away?
I think Phil might put in such a significant bet that... 100. Oh, he goes small here.
100.
call.
And now that issue is on the table.
Yeah, because he did go with the small bet. You see what he has behind.
This is funny. I wondered if Rodriguez would lead on this card. I'm not sure
180 is the bet.
if this is a thing in theory, but it's just so hard for him to find bluffs that it makes some sense. Unfortunately for him, he runs into a very strong hand, and Phil won't be folding. Phil got the nearly the full double.
Interesting line, interesting play by Rodriguez.
Yeah.